Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the joint recording with myself, John Khosravi, immigration lawyer, my wonderful associate, Anna Sergeeva, talking about U.S. immigration updates and info to help you better understand the process and tips and all this kind of stuff. This is general education only. It's not intended for individual advice. So you really need to consult with an immigration in your private because as you see in the discussions we're about to have, there's different levels of complexity that come in. So you really need to talk with an attorney to see what kind of service you need and what kind of difficulty your case has. But I think this will give you an idea of what's going on in the system. So Anya, thank you so much for coming on again today.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Let's jump to it.
So yeah, what the first thing we want to talk about is an interesting topic that doesn't get talked about too much, but it's the idea of affidavits and declarations. Typically, people submitting paperwork letters for immigration cases want to submit an affidavit, and it is requested that affidavits come in certain kinds of cases, or USCIS may respond with an RFE or a notice of intent to deny asking for affidavits. But affidavit requirement is a little bit difficult because you may need to go from a notary to sign it, bring an ID. The people might be overseas, or it might be during COVID where people weren't going outside the house. It makes it really hard. So at JQK Law Firm, we have a practice of doing unsworn declarations under the penalty of perjury. Could you talk about that, what that entails and where that comes from and why it's easier and kind of for people to do?
Sure. Yes. There are two kinds of letters that you can submit with your case to USCIS. Most likely, it's going to be part of your joint, proving your joint relationship with your spouse. That's what we primarily do here in our law firm. It can be declaration or it can be affidavit. So what's the difference? Affidavit, usually the one that is been sworn before the notary. So you have to actually go physically to see the notary and sign your letter in front of them. So sometimes, as John mentioned, it can be hard. Uh, so for this kind of cases, there is a possibility that you can just write a letter, right, and put the special language there under what is that U.S. Code 28 U.S. Code 1746. John has the language. I
Yeah,
don't.
28 US code. I'll read it off. It's a little bit complicated, but it's a 28 U.S. Code section 1746, unsworn declarations under penalty of perjury. I'm going to kind of shorten it because there's a lot of words, but it says wherever under any law of the United States or any rule or regulation, order, requirement made pursuant to law. So it says under all the laws of the United States, any matter that requires, and it has different kinds of things like evidence established or proof statement or sworn declarations. I'll bypass all that and go for the key word. It says under any law of the United States, any matter that requires an affidavit, so I use the word affidavit, and I'll skip through some of it, says such matter may with like force and effect be supported, evidenced, and established or proven by the unsworn declaration. So it's saying under any law, if there's an affidavit requirement, you could use the same effect we happen by these unsworn declarations, certification, verification, or statements in writing of such person which is subscribed by him. So again, this language is really complicated, as true under penalty of perjury and dated in substantially the following form. So I guess I'll go on with the rest of the statute. Essentially, it says you can have a declaration if it's dated and has this particular language, and there's two versions of the language, and it's not even, they say substantially the following form. It doesn't have to be exact, but we try to just do it exact. The first is if it's executed, signed within the outside the United States, without the United States, a weird way to put it. They say, quote, I declare, or you say certify, verify, or state under penalty of perjury under the laws of the United States of America that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on, and you write the date and you sign it. The signing obviously has to be by pen. Currently, USCIS accepts scans of these because of COVID, but never do a digital signature on anything submitting to the immigration agency. So if you're outside the United States, you say that. If you're in the United States, you say I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. You don't add the part where it says under laws of the United States. Now, I have an ebook. JK Law Firm has the Marriage Immigration Guide at the end in the addendum. We have a sample of these declarations for a marriage case, for example, for someone could provide. It has the language there and how we do it. But it's such an important thing because it saves people a lot of headache of having to get these notarized statements. Now, preferably, they will be notarized, but this is an option that's used quite frequently at our office.
Right. I just want to add like a couple of quick tips for preparing the declaration. As John mentioned, you can find the sample in our marriage green card guide. But if you write something for someone, please, if you refer to a person, give the person's full name, any person that you describe in your letter. If you refer to an event, you always need to say when the event took place, at least months and year,
Yeah, prefer
preferably
the
the
name,
dates too.
but at least once a year, yeah.
Yes, and place where it happened, where the event happened, like city, town, village, or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, from what we see, probably USCIS not always read these letters of like proving the bona fides of the relationship. But if something happens, if something is wrong with your case, they will definitely go into every letter, make sure that there is no discrepancies there. So please make sure that everything everything compatible with all the paperwork you submit is compatible with
It's hard because there's so many details they have to go through, and they especially when they don't like a case, they're looking for a problem to find in there, which makes it really difficult. But along with those descriptions and descriptiveness of the what you're trying to explain and the details, you also need to include the person who's going to sign the affidavit, their name, their date of birth, place of birth, city and country, their address, their phone number, their email, all this descriptive stuff. I have to put it all in there. It's listed when you look at the instructions for Form I-130, for example. It talks about declaration affidavits, and they really want this detailed information about who the person is, and potentially the person signing a declaration could be asked to appear before USCIS to answer and say, this was really me, I said this and stuff. I've never seen that happen. It is possible, I'm sure, in the history of immigration it's happened. But again, they don't normally put too much credit in these affidavits or declarations, especially for bona fides in a marriage case, if the rest of it is good. But we try to submit it if we don't have much, because some couples may be new, they might not have joint documents. So it's a thing we do add on, not every case, because it's not always required. And frankly, getting other people involved in a marriage case, for example, asking friends and family to sign letters, it's a personal thing. They may not want their relatives or friends to be in their relationship. They might have a small relationship, might be a private relationship. For example, they might be I have a couple who have a huge age discrepancy. The woman is much older than the guy, and they kept their relationship hidden because they know there would be so much judgment, and the family of the woman would not approve. So to avoid that drama, they got married, they live their life, and they don't want to get letters from family and friends to put it out there. It's a real marriage. It's just it's a personal thing they don't want to get out. At the same time, they might be a same-sex couple. Putting it out there that they're in a same-sex relationship could have blowback in various ways in their different cultures, foreign countries. So it's not always a thing to do, but we just do it on a case-by-case basis. So I thought it'd be really important to share it on you. Appreciate the guidance on that. So another thing that comes up when we're dealing with the agencies is the constant changes they have with some logistics bases, which is the forms and locations. Could you talk about that issue, which is a major headache for not only just regular people but immigration lawyers, because it's really unexpected?
Yeah, I would want to use the word nightmare, but it's probably not the right word. So what we've seen recently is that USA has been changing filing addresses like so much. Almost every week we've been getting these emails saying that the address for this form was changed. And for example, when we start working on the case, we have one address that we put on our cover letter, and but the time the case is done, it might be a couple of weeks, not so much time, right? um, it can be a different address. They can change the PO box number, or just add this Z+4 to the address, and you never know if you don't put it there. For example, they might lost your filing, and it might not even make it to USCIS. You never know.
Yeah.
So same day when you file, when you are going to USPS to send your petition, your application, check the filing addresses on the USCIS website, to the specific form that you are using, that you are sending. And another thing that I want to mention, but I forgot about it.
No, I mean it's the addition dates and the fees
Yes,
as well.
yes. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Yes. So addition dates on the forms. again, same thing. We start working on the form, and by the time it's done, again, it can be like really very short period of time, because usually we have our cases out so much faster than, for example, people who do it themselves. Yeah, and it can be very short time, and the form can change. Usually, like, they give you some time, like some grace period within which you can still use the old form, right?
Yeah, I mean, right before Trump, they'll give you a couple months runway so you know it's coming. But during Trump's administration, overnight, we just wake up one morning and the forms would be different. Then massive amounts of people would have their cases returned because it was the wrong form. So it's very, and they're kind of continuing that into the Biden administration so far, with certain forms being updated without much fanfare or notice.
Right, and it's very frustrating, it's time consuming, because you need to get everything um, from scratch if the form has changed. So you need to fill up the new form,
Yeah,
right? Probably evidence gonna stay the same, but still it's gonna take so much more time.
yeah.
And they're gonna send this package back to you. Sometimes it comes back and there's nothing there. So it's very stressful. It's very stressful. So to avoid this mistake, please make sure you check the edition date and the filing address, same day that you are sending your petition out to
Yeah,
US.
it may seem like basic information, but this is what immigration lawyers all do before they mail it. It's like one of the priorities, just as much as getting something signed, is just check it right before you go to the post office. They'll change it. And sometimes the fees may change without knowing as well. So it's really important to go on the website for the form. For example, I-130, there's a drop down menu where it says edition date. Make sure the edition date listed there matches what you have on the bottom left of the form that you have. And along with that, sometimes people, for some reason, print out their forms and the printer cuts off the bottom of the form. If the edition date listed there and the page number is not there, USCIS will return your case as being improper. You have to have the full page printed out. And I've seen this happen with clients before, people that came to me with a case rejected, that the printer just didn't print the bottom for some reason, but that's not going to be acceptable. Sometimes it may get accepted, the case goes through, and they even cash the fee, and then later you get the case returned saying this is the improper version of the form of the edition. Now, sometimes when USCIS updates a form and a new edition comes out, it's the exact same form. So you'll be like, well, what's the difference? There is no difference. It's the exact same thing. They just updated the number on it, but that's what we have to deal with. So it doesn't make sense. Contact your congressperson if you're trying to make sense of it. But being in this practice for so many years and with all the experience we have, we're not trying to see if stuff makes sense anymore. It's just like, this is what we have to do for success. And it's the nitty gritty of it, is checking this stuff. Even passport photos we include in there. Write the person's name who's on it on the back in case USCIS drops their passport photo on someone else's. They don't know who's who. At least they have the number, photo, name there, and maybe the alien number if the person has the alien number. There's a lot of different logistical and practical stuff we have to do. And even with regards to other things like tracking signature with postal codes and scanning. Could you talk about that, the importance of scanning your file before you send it in?
Yes, this is very, very, very important. I cannot tell
It's
you
probably
how
the most
much.
important thing we give any advice to anybody is this. Yeah.
Yes, please, please, whenever you send something, anything, it's pile of documents or it's just one document, doesn't matter. Please scan all your submission and have it somewhere saved. You will never know when you're gonna need it. If hopefully everything works out and everything is good, but if any issue pops up, uh, you will need it later. And what we do, for example, if client comes to us and we don't know, they don't have the copy of their file, we need to do a FOIA request. It's Freedom of Information Act request. It takes some time, like a couple months. It might take even longer than that.
Yeah.
And this delay can impact the submission too. So we'll not be able to submit the paperwork until we get the FOIA results.
And
Right.
sometimes you have to take a risk because if there's a deadline to submit it, and we have to get a waiver from the client, say, listen, we don't know what you submitted because you don't have the proof. I'm just going based on what you're telling us. And because there's a deadline here where we have to move forward, it's ideally we don't want to go that path. We have another case right now. We just submitted FOIA. We're planning on filing this I-130. I said, listen, we knew your FOIA is going to take a couple months. Everything's going to get delayed now, but we need to confirm what you said in previous applications because we don't want to be inconsistent. We wanted to make sure you did things right because things could come back later with wrong information and then create massive problems for everybody involved in the case.
Yes, and even if you have the forms, for example, saved on your computer, right? There's always something last minute you can add something to the form, and
Yeah.
later you forget about it, right?
Yeah.
And you need to have the exact same thing with your signature that you send to USCIS, exact copy. You can scan it, you can just make a copy of your file. It's always better to scan. Less trees to save
Yeah,
some
yeah.
trees.
Nowadays they have different technologies, different apps where you take a photo. I mean, it's going to take longer if you don't have a scanner. Not everyone's going to have a scanner. You could go to the different stores and just scan it there. But at the very least, take a photo of every page. Do something to keep a digital record of the file, because if you need to go to a lawyer later, or if you need to challenge USCIS, say that's not what I said. Here's my copy. Rarely it does kind of happen where government agents, change files and say no, that's not what we sent. Now it's hard to prove necessarily that your scan is that one, but it's a basic to start with. It's not something regular that happens where a government agent changes stuff, but rarely as has happened in the history of immigration. So it's really important to have that, to have a step up. And when you're finally, even after you scan it and you're mailing it to USCIS, put the money in and get, for example, with USPS, which is what we use, the US Postal Service, express mail, so it's next day delivery, comes with tracking and signature. So you want USCIS to sign off on it to make sure they received it. And that way you have something to show that, we sent this file, they got it. A lot of lawyers use FedEx and UPS because they don't trust the US Postal Service. I've used them all, and they've all failed me one time or another. So now I just stick with the government mailing service, and so that's that. But some lawyers only do FedEx, UPS. I find it just becomes more expensive, but it doesn't add that much level of service from my experience. But everyone does it differently. Anything else you want to add to that, Anya?
I think that's it. We talked about everything in this regard.
Yeah, it's it's kind of a boring subject, but it's just so important because these are the main issues we deal with on a practical basis. Because not every case is super complex. There's always something, the issue that pops up in a certain case, but these are the the basics that we have to be mindful of. And so one other topic that I want to talk about is what happens if you're doing a marriage adjustment case, I-130 petition with an I-485, and it's denied because they don't believe your relationship is real. They don't accuse you of fraud necessarily, but they don't find the bona fides are there. What are the next steps you could do to challenge that? Essentially, the I-130 is the thing being denied. The I-485 gets denied automatically because the I-130, the core of the case isn't approved. What options does a person have after that?
Yes, we've seen this before. It happens sometimes. So basically, there are two options. You can refile, or there is always option to appeal to Board of Immigration Appeals.
Yeah.
And most likely, again, it's on case-by-case basis, but most likely it's going to be better just to refile, again, depending on what you have on your file.
Yeah.
Probably it's going to be better to refile. Just submit the if you submit the same application, it's going to be denied again, understandably.
Yeah.
So the thing about second attempt is that you need to give them probably more stuff, right? More pictures, more evidence, more bills, everything that you have joined.
Yeah.
If the case was denied based on that,
Yeah.
might have been denied by based on some other reason, but if it was denied based on that the USCIS didn't find enough evidence of bona fide relationship, then you have to pile up your case and submit as much as you can, right?
Yeah.
So when you, on the other hand, when you work with the USCIS, sometimes it's not always good to provide too much. It's not good to provide too little, but it's not always good to provide too much. And this is a very hard balance to find sometimes. And attorney can definitely help you with that.
Yeah, it is an art. Now, I do have to say, we've never had a case get denied. We've had people come after they got a notice of intent to deny, then we try to help them with this kind of stuff. Luckily, up to this point, we know first of all, you choose a case where you know it's going to work, because the people don't have it ready yet. We say, okay, go get more documents and prepare your relationship, because it's all proven essentially through paperwork and the interview. And the reason why immigration lawyers typically refile a new case instead of appealing it is appeal sometimes focuses on if there's issues of law or there's some travesty of justice going on. But if you refile the adjustment case, you'll get another chance in most cases to do an in-person interview where you can talk with somebody to explain the indiscrepancy, which makes it really important to fully prepare. The second time around, it's going to be tough because they are going to look at you as a case that was denied before with mistrust. They most likely will separate you and grill you to catch these indiscrepancies. and you have to have a full explanation of what happened last time, why this was an error, and get all these documents together and be really prepared. Not too much, not too little. If it's too much, their eyes are not going to pay attention to everything. If it's too little, they won't trust it. You could bring more documents at the interview to hand them so they can look at it there. It's a fine dance. Usually, it requires more work than if it always requires much more work than if you had just gone with the attorney beforehand and did it properly. I mean, sometimes we'll have an attorney that doesn't work out well either, but it will be more intensive and more complex the second time around. It is what it is. It does happen. The statistics show it. But that's why it's really important to just be really prepared. What we've seen is when these cases come up, is typically with people who found their own and they didn't realize the complexity of the situation and didn't take it as seriously enough because they said, well, we're a real couple, we have nothing to hide. Well, this is a government agency. You can't
This is not enough.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes this is not enough.
It's not enough. I mean, you can't just go on it because that officer has a manager above them that's going to review their work, and they just say, "Well, this couple smiled really nice, and I felt it was real." That's not enough. They're going to have to prove to their own boss and internally that these people, you're submitting proper documents to show it's a real couple. So you need these bona fide documents. You need to know your relationship well. They recently, ever since the last couple of years, really after Trump, they go into a lot of detail the interview of exactly when you met, when your first date was, when you the next milestone happened, what the date was, where you were, maybe even what you're wearing, what you ate, what restaurant it was. And they want to know the names and details of the stuff. And honestly, most people will forget this kind of stuff. I don't remember all these details with my spouse. She gets angry at me because we were dating for several years before we got married, and I always forget the year we were married because I always remember the year we started dating as when our relationship started. And so if I went to the interview without practicing, I would have got this wrong myself. Even though obviously I have 2 kids, it's a legitimate relationship. The guys usually do forget this kind of stuff. What I've seen. So you got to prep it and be prepared to answer this kind of stuff, even though it's not typical stuff you know off the top of your head. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with.
Right. And I would like to reiterate this again, what I was saying previously, that being in a real relationship, yes, this is what it's supposed to be, but you need to prepare for it's like a test, think about it as like a test. And you need to know how the test is run. If you don't know how the test is run, then you can fail it, even though, for example, English, yes, I passed. Probably a lot of people know this test. It's TOEFL, right? Test of English as foreign language, and I knew English very well, right? I was preparing for the test, and my mentor told me that knowing English is not enough. You need to know the test. Same thing here, just the same thing here.
Yeah. And it's not anything like misrepresentation or fraud. It's just you got to know, like, SATs or LSAT tests that we have to take, and all these different kinds of tests, even the bar, what's on there, but there's a methodology for all this, how they expect it. This is systematic. So it's not about making things up or lying. It's just kind of like being prepared to deal with what you're going to deal with. You can't just go. I mean, maybe a person knows how to run, but if they can't just go and run 10 miles, they may have to practice for it. They know they physically have it in them to grow it there. But my main point is, it's not prepping for any like lying or anything like that. It's just knowing all the details prepared for all these different questions they can answer. And in our guide, the marriage ultimate guide to marriage immigration at marriageimmigrationlaw.com, a free guide you can download. There's a 4-page practice questions, that typical things they ask, so people prepare for it. And sometimes they might ask very intimate kind of stuff. And I've had a case where the husband wasn't comfortable in asking. They separated them. And the husband wasn't comfortable, so he kind of was lying. It was the U.S. petitioner, and he was saying, no, we don't do this and that. I can't go into too much detail. And the wife said something different, and the interviewer said, how come your husband says something different? And he's like, well, he's embarrassed. He's ashamed of talking about this. And although he lied, she understood, they could tell the guy was really uncomfortable, and she still passed the case. She just said your husband needs to stop being a numbskull, and then she made a joke about him not paying attention and that kind of stuff.
Yes, I have the same thing with my husband. Yes, he never pays attention. Like, he doesn't know what color we have dishwasher or fridge, and this is the question that you can be easily asked during the USCIS interview. You just don't pay attention to this kind of things.
Yeah, they ask what color is the rug, what kind of couch, what bed. And a lot of guys don't pay attention to this. What kind of pillows you have, color pillows. It's just not typical. So as a guy, you just, when you go home, look at it before the interview, make sure there's no fraud there. It's just kind of paying more attention, whereas you typically don't, because the guys are caught up in other kind of things mentally. Not always guys, but it's typically 98% of the time it's the husband I've seen. But it is what it is. And so you got to prepare. Thank you so much, Anna. I know this is just the immigration practice 101. I'm sure a lot of immigration lawyers will watch this and get it to newer in the game, because it's just the basics of stuff we deal with that people don't expect. It's not always fully law. It's a lot of this practical kind of stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other topic?
Yes, I just want to say that when people are thinking about whether to get an attorney from the outset or do everything themselves, usually we say yes. You can do potentially you can do it yourself, but again, we don't know level of education, English level. If you can read the instruction and you can put the right answer into the box, maybe
Yeah.
you don't get the question right, you know. So it's always better to have someone on your side from the
Yeah.
out, because
Yeah.
later on, for example, if there is in a denial, and to fix it after the denial, it takes so much more time, so much more effort, and so much more money eventually. And of course, number one is stress
Yeah.
and time. Imagine if a person filed for adjustment and then they got denied 2 years later, and again their work permit gets revoked, right? They cannot they cannot travel, they cannot do anything unless
Potentially may get
until
a notice to appear in court, and then immigration court is a disaster, expensive, time consuming, stress. So the stress is just the worst. I mean, it's like it's the end of your life almost. So you got a disease or something, uh, and we see like a lot of people don't take these forms as seriously. And a lot of parts of the world, and a lot of other things, you could like miss stuff like. And I went to the doctor the other day, and they asked for my social security number. I always leave that blank. They asked for like all this information on work history. I always leave all of it blank. It's like, what difference does it make? This is for the doctor to know all this kind of stuff. But immigration, you leave things blank, it's not good. You have to fill everything properly on the form. And we have a case where the person left half of it blank, and that leaves a lot of room for error, or more importantly, the officer getting annoyed because they're going through thousands of these cases, and they see something that's a mess and missing information, requires them to follow up and ask more questions and take more time. Just psychologically, it's going to put the officer in a bad place where they're not going to look at you right, or they may look at you as being dishonest because you left important stuff blank, or you put boxes. And we have one case where it came to us after denial where the person had overstayed their visa. Now, they had married a U.S. citizen, so overstaying a visa has no effect on the case at all. But to the question where they asked, have you violated your status? They said no. And so they probably didn't understand what it meant, weren't paying attention, didn't think it was important. They easily could correct them. They did during the interview, but that immediately puts the officer in a bad mood that says, hey, this person's not properly reading this stuff, or they're not being potentially dishonest. And if they're coming from this, law enforcement hardcore kind of mindset that some officers do, that they see one discrepancy, they automatically think you're a liar, that sets you on a downhill path. And you both, our opinions on this case is probably all these discrepancies, which were honest mistakes, them not paying attention, probably put a negative image of the client in the officer's head so that they start mistrusting everything else, despite the fact that they're a completely legitimate couple. It's just really obvious when you talk with them, but it just put him in a bad mood. And that's probably what happened. That's an assumption we're making, but that's most likely a big part of the denial.
right. So when you deal with USCIS, you always have to think about that. You need to make it easy for them to grant your petition. Don't make it
Exactly.
hard for them, but leave it blank, but not providing all the information. You make it really hard for them to grant your case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's,
think
it's just,
about that as well.
yeah, they're tired. I mean, they're doing a lot of work, and it's just when you see this stuff, you get it some application. It's even us sometimes because we have questionnaires we complete, and we're ready to start a case. We get a questionnaire, half it is missing, or they write an address, they don't include the street number, and it's like, oh, now we got to follow up with them, ask for this, come back, and we'll do it. Always part of our work, doesn't offend us, but like it ruins the flow of it because you just want to start, get everything done fast, and get it done. But when there's missing information, there's more back and forth. It takes longer, and that clients want things done. But on the USCIS side, they want to get things done too because they have. If you go to the interviews, you'll see they have boxes and boxes of files waiting there, ready to go. So every time one of them comes and is missing stuff, that puts these boxes on hold, and they got to deal with you until they can finish up their caseload. And it adds on, and their supervisor says, "How come you're not getting your cases done? The guy next to you, the gal next to you, got 10 cases done today. Why'd you only get 5?" And they'll say, "Well, this person case wasn't that well done," but it just puts them in a difficult position. So you really want to make life easy for everybody and pay attention to this kind of stuff. It might sound boring, but this is the most important stuff other than the basics of the law of making sure you're even qualified to file for adjustment or whatever. Anya, thank you so much for coming on and talk about this. I'm glad we got off our chest because we've been seeing this kind of stuff recently, and it hurts our feelings because we know how difficult it is for people's lives. I mean, we lose sleep worrying about people. I mean, Anya, for this call, we had a private talk about a case, and you feel bad for people because they want to start their lives here, they want to live in peace and not worry. But this stress is now going to continue for months and months and months until we get a new decision, and we can't guarantee that that decision is going to be positive, but we could only do what we can and hope for the best.
Right. Yeah.
So if anyone's interested in having a consultation, just email us at info@jqqlaw.com and briefly describe your case, info@jqqlaw.com. And download the Ultimate Marriage Green Card Guide at marriageimmigrationlaw.com. And finally, we have a live Q&A where I come and take your questions live 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific time every Wednesday, 6 p.m., where we're on YouTube, JQK Law from YouTube page, on TikTok, Immigration Lawyer John, the LinkedIn page for John Khosravi and myself, and we have one more in their Facebook, JQK Law Facebook page. So all these different places where you can log in, ask your questions real time. I'll do my best to respond. And we also give out free video consultations during the live show, so check it out. I guess that's it. Anya, thanks so much, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for watching. See you
Thank you.
next week.